What's up, everybody? Today we are going to go through 3D sketching in Fusion 360. So let's hop over to Fusion and go through this. So 3D sketching is something that can be very useful depending on what you're working on, specifically for wiring harnesses or tubes, things like that. So we're going to create a new sketch, click a face. Over here, you'll see it says 3D sketch, and you can either check it on or check it off. In this case, you want to make sure it is checked on. And we're going to start with something very simple. So we are going to create a line, and you can see that this little 3D origin pops up, and you can see which surface you are looking at. So right now we have this front surface selected. So your sketch will be in that front surface. So you can click and you'll see it hops over to now where your line is starting, where the origin of that new line segment is starting from. So you can rotate the screen a little bit, and if you want to switch to, let's say, the top view, you can click that even while your line segment is activated, and now you are creating a sketch on that surface or in that dimension. And let's say we want to go down now in the Z direction. You can click here. We've now switched again, and you can see we now have this 3D sketch with multiple line segments. Okay, let's go ahead and end that. And if we are just creating a simple tube, let's say, let's come up here to modify. We'll create a fillet. You can do this all in the same 3D sketch. Multiple fillets here. Don't really care about the size right now. Okay, those fillets are added. And we can hit finish sketch. There's our 3D sketch we just created. Okay, so if we want to turn this into a tube, there are a few ways you can do it. We can create a new sketch. Let's select this plane. Create a circle here, and you can see it's still showing this 3D sketch because we did not uncheck it for this, but that's fine for now. This should still work, no problem. Okay, so we are creating a tube. Let's just dimension these however we want. 0.1, this one will be 0.15. Okay, and finish that sketch. All right, now we will come up to create. We'll do a sweep, and the profile that we want swept will be this. So we are creating a tube. Select the path, be right there. And you can see it automatically selects that entire 3D sketch. Okay, and there we have a tube. Now, you could also create just a wire, a cable, whatever you are trying to create that needs to go in multiple dimensions, not just in X, not just in Y. You want this to be in 3 dimensions. So there's actually a faster way we could have created this. So instead of creating this additional sketch with our circles to dimension our tube, I will show you how you could do that much faster, which can be pretty beneficial if you are quickly trying to iterate in CAD. So we still have our 3D sketch here. Let's make sure that is shown. There we go. So come up to create, come down to pipe, and here you just need to select this line and it already creates it automatically. Now this pipe is huge, so we're going to need to change the size of it. Let's go back to 0.15. Section thickness, we can leave it at 0.038. Hit OK. And now we have a tube that was automatically made very quickly with this handy pipe tool. Okay, there are a few other useful ways to use 3D sketches. And sometimes you might want a more organic shape, not just straight lines in different dimensions like we just created. So let's delete these. Okay, delete that sketch. Delete that tube. Let's start over. Create a new sketch. This one we will select this plane here. We don't need this to be a 3D sketch, so I'll turn that off. I'm going to create a circle. Let's make this smaller, make it about a 1/2 inch. Okay, finish that sketch. Let's turn on the origin here. That can be helpful with what we're doing right now. And let's do an offset plane, offset from the plane we just created that sketch on. And let's go pretty far. Let's go 15 inches. Okay, so now we have that plane set up. And let's create another sketch on that plane we just created. And let's say these are, the first one created was the start point. This one is going to be the end point of a cable, or again, a pipe. It doesn't really matter. 0.5 there as well. And we can add some dimensions here just so we have this fully defined. 4 inches there. And let's add a vertical. Let's make that 6. Finish sketch. Okay, so now we have this start point and end point kind of floating in space right now. So let's say we want to connect these 2 points. Maybe these are sections where we will have a cable running in some sort of electrical assembly. Maybe it is places where we need to route a pipe. Whatever the case may be, let's show you how to use a 3D sketch to make this much easier than it would be doing a bunch of different line segments. And you can also create a very organic shape. So to start, we will create another sketch. And let's start on this plane here. This one we do want to be a 3D sketch, so make sure you check that. And to start, we're going to create a line segment starting here, and we want it coming out in this X direction. Okay, we will leave that there. We're also going to create a line segment up here. So let's try to find this center point. And we want that to also be in this X dimension. Okay. Let's dimension these. We know how long they are. 1/2 inch up there. 1/2 inch down here. Now you can see these are coming out perpendicular to the circles we drew earlier. And you want to double check and make sure they are in fact perpendicular. This will be very helpful, as you will see in a moment. Next, we are going to create a spline. And this spline is going to start where this line segment ended. And we're just gonna drop a few points. Let's switch. Right now we are in this X dimension, but let's say we want to move over to the Y dimension a little bit. And now we want to go vertical. Just drop in a few points. And we're going to end back at this line segment here. Check OK. And now let's get out of this spline tool. You can see we have this kind of crazy looking spline that goes between these 2 points. Now this one I may have gotten a little carried away with, so let's pull that in a little bit. There we go. We don't need this thing to be massive. But now we want to be able to route a cable or a pipe along the spline, but you can see there's kind of these weird connection points between the spline and our straight segments. So come up here and select, let's see, there we go. Make sure your tangent is selectable. And we are just going to make this spline tangent to the straight line. So now we have a tangency here. And we will do the same thing over here. Again, we're working in this 3D sketch still, so this makes this very easy and handy to work with. Okay, now you can see how the spline comes out in kind of this crazy shape, but then straightens out as it comes into this connection point and does the same thing down here. All right, so let's finish that sketch and let's create a sweep. Okay, select here as our profile, select our path, which is that entire line. And look at that, we have this very organic looking shape, something that maybe an actual cable would look like in real life. Maybe not a pipe. This would be a crazy bend on a pipe, but for a cable that needs to be routed around a few other components, this works quite well. And just for review, we can delete that sweep. Let's make sure our sketch is still shown. Come up here, let's do this pipe, select this, and it's pulling in the same parameters we had earlier. And so you can see it has just created this pipe. And you'll see there's been a few moments where it has lagged and slowed down a little bit. One of the downsides to doing a 3D sketch like this is you may notice that it's going to slow things down a little bit when you're working with these 3D sketches. So just something to keep in mind. If you're doing a giant assembly with a bunch of these, that could start to cause problems, or making a giant part file with all of these sketches. You could notice a little bit of lag, so just be aware of that. Okay, and that is all I have for this tutorial creating 3D sketches in Fusion. If you have questions about this or you're struggling with things, please leave a comment. I try to respond to all comments about these different tutorials that I make. That's it. You may have noticed the channel name changed. It is now Bill U CAD, focusing on CAD tutorials. If you still want Design More, Despair Less, the podcast, that is still available on Spotify and everywhere podcasts are available. All right, that's it. Stay tuned for more tutorials coming out soon.